So picture this. It is New Year's Eve, 1855, a freezing cold London midnight.
Oh, man. Just absolutely freezing. I mean, middle of winter in England is no joke.
Right, totally. And instead of popping champagne or, lighting fireworks or singing cheerful songs, you have thousands of people packed shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, inside this dimly lit, desperately cold chapel. They are definitely not there for a party.
No, they are not. They are listening to a 21-year-old preacher tell them that they are rapidly running out of time and that their darkest, most well-hidden secrets are about to be exposed to the blinding light of a holy God.
It is such a heavy, heavy scene.
It really is. So welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we are taking a deep dive into an incredibly atmospheric historical text. It is a watch night service sermon delivered by Charles Spurgeon.
Yeah, December 31st, 1855.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack his striking perspectives on human mortality, the fleeting nature of time, and, well, the unvarnished reality of how mortals should actually speak to the divine.
It is a massive topic.
Yeah.
And it is so contrary to how we normally handle a new year.
Absolutely. Because whether you are staring down a new year or stepping into a different phase of life or just evaluating your own daily schedule, the heavenly arithmetic discussed in this event will radically shift how you measure your days.
Yeah, heavenly arithmetic. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
And the setting itself is just a masterclass in atmospheric tension.
It really is. Set the scene for us a bit more.
Well, we are looking at a gathering that is entirely contrary to the modern celebratory approach to the passage of time. Like you said, Spurgeon is not hosting a social event here. He is launching a rescue mission.
A rescue mission. That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, because the service begins near midnight. And he explicitly states his motivation for holding a watch night service.
Yeah.
He expects souls to be saved. He is not there to just pass the time.
Right. He is incredibly urgent about it. And the text frames the gathering with this intense hymn, right?
It does. They sing a hymn that includes the line, upstarting at the midnight cry, behold your heavenly bridegroom nigh.
Wow. Upstarting at the midnight cry.
Yeah, the physical and spiritual atmosphere is just saturated with gravity. I mean, we are talking about a packed room in the middle of a brutal winter filled with people at an hour when the rest of the city is fast asleep.
Which brings up a big question for me. What drives a person to push past physical exhaustion to speak to a crowd at midnight?
That is the real question, isn't it?
Yeah, because Spurgeon states in the text that he would preach at all hours of the day if his body and mind could handle the task. He is driven by this stark reality of damnation.
Right. He quotes the Apostle Paul saying, woe is me if I preach not the gospel.
Exactly. To me, this feels like walking into an emergency room. Like a trauma surgeon stays awake through the night because the stakes are literal life and death.
Yeah, that is a spot-on analogy. The regular business hours are totally irrelevant when someone is bleeding out.
Right. You do not tell a bleeding patient, hey, come back at 9 a.m. when the clinic opens. But why demand this of the congregation? Why drag thousands of people out of their beds for a midnight cry instead of just doing this on a Sunday morning?
Well, the late hour actually operates as a psychological disruptor.
A psychological disruptor. How so?
Think about it. When you alter a person's physical routine, you break down their standard mental defenses. At midnight, all the distractions of the workday are gone.
That makes a lot of sense. The commerce of London has completely stopped.
Right. The darkness outside isolates the congregation inside that chapel. It forces a level of introspection that simply does not happen at 10 o'clock on a sunny Tuesday morning.
Because you cannot just look out the window and watch carts go by. You are trapped in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spurgeon is looking at this crowd of people, and he is seeing their sheer fragility. He is not treating time as some convenient metric for organizing a calendar.
No, he is treating time as a countdown.
Yes. And he moves right into an exposition of Psalm 90, which sets up this massive contrast between the eternal nature of God and the frail, temporary nature of humanity.
He really leans into that contrast. On one side, you have God, who he describes as the eternal dwelling place where mutation must not approach.
Mutation must not approach, meaning God never changes. He is totally immutable.
Right. And then on the other side, you have humanity. And the metaphors he uses for humanity are just brutal.
Oh, they're devastating.
He says, we are carried away as with a flood. He calls it an impetuous torrent of time. He says we are as powerless as straw in that river.
Straw in a river, that is such a vivid image. You establish immutability on one side, and then this constant, uncontrollable motion on the other.
And we cannot stand against the force driving us onward at all. We are just swept away.
Yeah, look at the specific phrasing he uses there. An impetuous torrent.
Right, an impetuous torrent is violent. It is rushing, and it is utterly indifferent to whatever is caught in its current.
Spot on. Spurgeon notes that we are always in motion, even when we do not realize it. We sleep, and the current carries us. We wake, and the current carries us.
There is no pausing the river.
None at all. He compares human life to a spider's web, which I find fascinating.
A spider's web. How does he frame that?
He says it is curiously constituted, full of wisdom in its complicated frame, but incredibly fragile and easily destroyed.
Oh, wow. So we are incredibly complex, but we can be wiped out in a second.
Right. And then he pushes the imagery even further. He states that glass is granite compared with flesh, and vapors are rocks compared with life.
Wait, glass is granite compared with flesh. That line is a massive blow to the ego.
It really is. It completely dismantles the illusion of human durability.
It totally does. And this brings us to what he calls heavenly arithmetic. Spurgeon points out that the psalmist says we should number the days of our years.
The days of our years, right, not just the years themselves.
Yeah, he highlights that we always think about our years, but we rarely think about the days.
Which is so true. We mark birthdays. We mark anniversaries.
Right. It makes me think about managing personal finances. We evaluate our financial health by looking at our massive annual salary. We say, I make this much a year, and it feels like a big, secure number.
Oh, that is a great comparison.
Yeah.
A big salary makes you feel invincible.
Exactly. But the daily budget is where the actual spending happens. A massive annual salary means absolutely nothing if you are bleeding cash every single day on careless purchases.
Yeah, you will go bankrupt while boasting about your yearly income.
Right. But I have to ask, does seeing ourselves as helpless straw in a river of time, just spending our daily budget so quickly, does that just breed nihilism?
That is a very fair question.
Like, if I am just a vapor, why should I even care what I do today?
Oh, that is the natural human reflex, right?
Yeah.
If we are frail, then nothing matters.
Mm.
But Spurgeon uses that frailty to force a shift in reliance.
A shift in reliance.
Yeah. If you believe you are a rock, you will try to stand firm against the torrent of time on your own strength. And eventually, you will be swept away.
Because you are not actually a rock.
Exactly. But if you accept that you are straw, you will look for a solid riverbank to cling to.
Oh, I see. You look outside of yourself for stability.
Right. Modern culture tries to fight the torrent of time constantly. We see this in the endless marketing of anti-aging products or the obsession with biohacking.
Oh, yeah. And the relentless pursuit of productivity methods to squeeze more output from a finite day.
Spot on. We try to build dams to stop the river, but the source material suggests a completely different approach.
Which is embracing our frailty.
Yeah, embracing our frailty and anchoring ourselves to the eternal God where mutation must not approach. Heavenly arithmetic is about recognizing the limits of our ledger.
So we stop investing in the temporary and start securing the eternal.
Exactly. And Spurgeon does not let the congregation just sit comfortably with abstract thoughts about time. He shifts the spotlight directly onto their actions.
Yeah, he gets very personal here. He brings up the concept of human iniquity and draws a really sharp distinction.
He does. He notes that some people wear their wrongs openly.
Right. He uses the example of Cain. He says some have the mark of justice on their very brow, just blabbing out the tale of their sad history for everyone to see.
But then he targets the people hiding in the back.
The respectable people.
Yes, he talks about secret sins. He says the night may be too dark for human eyes, and the deed too secret for mortals to behold, but God sets those secret sins in the light of his countenance.
In the light of his countenance. The specific metaphor he uses here carries terrifying weight.
It is a stunning metaphor. He says, just as we set a stone in a golden ring, so has God set your secret sins in the light of his countenance.
Think about the action of a jeweler setting a stone. A jeweler mounts a diamond or a ruby in a gold ring for one specific reason.
To display it.
Yes, to display it. The setting is designed to catch the light, to illuminate every single facet of the gem, and to make it visible to absolutely everyone.
So what humanity tries desperately to bury in the dark, the divine takes, mounts in gold, and illuminates in perfect absolute light.
The eyes of the infinite Jehovah see the hidden things as clearly as a diamond displayed in a jeweler's window.
It is a horrifying thought.
The idea of God taking my worst, most shameful moment, mounting it in gold, and shining a floodlight on it is just, it is horrifying. We operate under the assumption that if nobody saw it, it never happened.
Right, out of sight, out of mind.
Think about digital footprints today. We use incognito browsing, we use encrypted messaging apps and auto-deleting texts, believing we are wiping the slate clean.
We assume the dark room of the internet hides us completely.
But there's always a server log somewhere.
Always.
In this text, the universe itself has a server log that cannot be erased by human hands, and God is reading those logs in broad daylight. How does a congregation even process that level of exposure without completely shutting down in terror?
Well, the realization of that divine omniscience carries an incredible psychological and spiritual burden. You can almost feel the weight of the room shifting as Spurgeon delivers these lines.
I cannot even imagine the tension in that chapel.
He is looking at a crowd of thousands, knowing that every single person there is hiding something in the dark. This crushing reality of human guilt and divine sight forces a total crisis.
The law has done its work. The congregation is utterly exposed and unable to save themselves.
Exactly. And this triggers a really fascinating shift in the service.
Yeah, because instead of immediately offering a, 10-step plan for self-improvement, Spurgeon shifts from scriptural exposition into a raw, desperate pastoral prayer.
Before he even begins his main sermon, he stands before his congregation and confesses his own shortcomings.
He admits that his prayers are not as earnest as they should be, and that he does not preach with enough fire or energy.
Which is wild coming from Spurgeon.
Right. He cries out for God to save the people, explicitly stating, "The heart is too hard for man to melt, and the soul made of iron too hard for flesh and blood to render soft."
The soul made of iron.
Yeah. He declares that men cannot come unless the Father draws them, but he adds that if God gives them the ability, they shall run after him.
Right, that is a core theological stance.
But I have a pushback here. If the pastor truly believes he cannot melt an iron heart, and that his words are just flesh and blood, why is he exhausting himself preaching at midnight?
That is the classic question.
Right, like why not just stay home and let God do the work?
Well, that is the classic objection to Reformed theology, specifically the doctrine of total depravity. Spurgeon is operating with the conviction that the human will is bound by its own corruption. That is the iron heart.
Okay, so the iron heart cannot soften itself.
Right. He openly, publicly admits his complete inability to change human hearts through his own rhetoric, logic, or emotional manipulation.
So he is relying entirely on irresistible grace.
Yes. He believes the Creator must actively draw the individual and grant them the willingness to respond. But to answer your question about why he preaches, he views preaching as the ordained means through which God operates.
The ordained means, make that concrete for me.
Think of a blacksmith working with cold iron. If you want to reshape a piece of iron, you need a hammer.
Right, you have to hit it.
But striking cold metal with a hammer achieves nothing. The hammer just bounces right off. The iron relies entirely on the heat of the fire to become soft.
Oh, I see.
The preacher functions as the instrument. He is the hammer hitting the metal, but the actual softening relies entirely on the heat of the Holy Spirit. He preaches because God uses the foolishness of preaching to apply the heat.
So he is hitting the iron, praying for the fire to fall. That makes perfect sense of his metallurgical analogy.
Exactly.
Spurgeon says, "He cannot, but thou canst, Lord, they will not come, but thou canst make them willing when you act." This doctrine, which can initially sound so harsh, actually brings a massive amount of relief.
Relief. How so?
Well, it removes the pressure to manufacture a spiritual outcome. The duty is just to speak the truth, to swing the hammer, and rely on the sovereign heat of God to melt the iron.
Precisely. The burden of conversion is lifted from the shoulders of the minister and placed squarely on the sovereignty of God.
That is a huge weight off.
It is. And after this intense prayer, he moves into the main sermon text, which is Lamentations chapter 2, verse 19. Arise, cry out in the night.
Okay, so he is pulling from Jeremiah here.
Yeah, this verse was originally directed at Zion by the weeping prophet Jeremiah, who was looking at the literal, physical destruction of Jerusalem.
But Spurgeon takes this ancient grief and applies it directly to the Church of 1855.
He does. He laments that the church is departing from the living God. He says she is mixing with the nations and losing pure doctrine.
He calls out idle shepherds and slumbering ministers. He urges the congregation to weep until a new reformation comes to purge the floor.
He is turning the prophetic critique inward. He isn't standing at the pulpit railing against the secular culture of London or the atheists in the universities,
No, he is looking straight at his own institution.
which is incredibly bold.
It is, and this makes me think about corporate or institutional rot today. When an organization forgets its founding mission, the leaders often try to gloss over the decline.
Oh, absolutely. They hire PR firms, launch rebranding campaigns.
Yeah, and they enforce a kind of toxic positivity. They demand that everyone smile and pretend the ship is not sinking.
Just keep playing the violins on the Titanic.
Right. But Spurgeon takes the exact opposite approach. He demands they sit in the rubble and weep over it. But I have to ask, is weeping actually productive? Doesn't weeping just breed a culture of complaint and paralysis?
Well, if the weeping is rooted in self-pity, yes, it breeds paralysis. But Spurgeon views mourning as an active, spiritually vital engagement.
Active mourning, what does that look like?
Acknowledging the ruin is the necessary prerequisite for any genuine restoration. In a corporate sense, you cannot fix a failing business model until the CEO admits the current model is totally bankrupt.
That makes sense. You have to admit the problem exists.
Right. And in a spiritual sense, the church cannot experience a new reformation until it mourns its own theological and moral decay.
So the weeping is about facing reality.
Yeah. He states that the church's honor is trodden in the dust and that pure doctrine is no longer proclaimed in her streets. He warns that judgment must begin at the house of God.
Judgment begins in the house. That is heavy.
He demands that the people within the walls wake up, recognize the severity of the decline, and physically express their grief.
And he does not leave them solely in a state of mourning for the broader institution. He pivots directly to the individuals sitting in the pews who need exhortation.
He brings it right down to the individual level.
He breaks down the text from Lamentations. Arise, cry out in the night. In the beginning of the watches, pour out thine heart like water. He breaks that into 4 highly tactical pillars of midnight prayer.
The 4 pillars, so let's look at those.
The first point he makes is that it is never too soon to pray. He pushes back against the idea that religion is just an old man's crutch.
Right, he says it's a gold chain for youth.
A gold chain. He calls out young people who want to postpone serious thought, reminding them that procrastination is the thief of time.
The imagery of the gold chain dismantles the cultural assumption that piety is a burden that robs youth of its joy.
Yeah, we often think of religion as something that ruins the fun of being young.
Exactly. But he frames it instead as an ornament that arrays a young person with honor. He warns that the malicious fiend whispers, postpone, postpone, procrastinate.
The delay tactic.
Yeah, it is a psychological trap. It convinces the young that they have a boundless reservoir of time before they need to address eternal matters.
Which plays right into the arrogance of youth, the belief that you can live however you want for decades and then simply settle your spiritual accounts on your deathbed.
Spun on. And then he flips the coin for his second point. It is not too late to cry out.
Right. He mentions that Satan has 2 tricks with the clock. First, he sets the clock back and says there is time enough yet.
And then, when that stops working, he fast-forwards the hands and cries out, too late, too late.
Yeah, Spurgeon says no shop is open so late as the house of mercy. I love that line. But how do these 2 specific lies, presumption and despair, operate to keep a person paralyzed?
They are just brilliant psychological levers. Presumption paralyzes you by removing the urgency.
If I have 40 years, why do anything today?
Right. If you believe you have 40 years to figure things out, you will do absolutely nothing today. You will presume upon tomorrow. Despair, on the other hand, paralyzes you by removing the hope.
Oh, wow. So if I think I am too far gone, I also do nothing.
Exactly. If you believe your habits are too deeply entrenched or your history is too dark, you will convince yourself that the window for grace is permanently closed. The adversary uses both ends of the spectrum to achieve the exact same result, total inaction.
Inaction either way, that is wild.
But Spurgeon shatters both illusions. He assures the distressed individual that even if they are taking the last nap of death, if they're called, 12 o'clock is not too late. The mercy seat remains accessible regardless of the hour.
That brings us to his third point, which gets incredibly intense. He says we cannot pray too vehemently.
Vehemently. He wants volume and passion.
Yeah. God loves impetuous prayers. Spurgeon tells his congregation to ignore polished English grammar. He says, tush upon English grammar.
Tush upon English grammar. I love how he says that.
To illustrate this, he uses the biblical parable of a man knocking on a neighbor's door at midnight to ask for bread.
Okay, the midnight knocker.
Oh, right. In polite society, if you need something from a neighbor, you walk up, Give a single soft knock, and if they don't answer, you assume they're busy and you just walk away.
Yeah, you don't want to be a bother.
But Spurgeon says no. He says, do not give a gentle tap like a lady, and do not give a single knock like a beggar. He says, take the knocker and rap hard until the very door seems to shake.
Rattle the door off its hinges.
Exactly. The guy in the bed is yelling, go home, don't disturb me. And the man outside is just shouting louder, I must have bread.
It is so aggressive.
It feels almost disrespectful. Are we really supposed to approach the sovereign God like a frantic, demanding neighbor?
Well, it absolutely violates Victorian social etiquette, which is precisely why Spurgeon uses the analogy. He is contrasting this desperate, door-rattling demand with the formal, highly polished religious practices often seen in society.
Because back then, prayer was very formal.
Oh, very. People were accustomed to reciting beautiful periods and elegant prose in their prayers. They treated prayer as a performance of intellect and proper breeding.
So Spurgeon just strips all of that away.
He demands loud, vehement, grammatically incorrect desperation. The theology behind this is that God is not offended by our desperation.
He is offended by our apathy.
Spot on. A drowning man does not worry about his sentence structure when he yells for a lifeguard. If you truly believe your soul is in peril, your prayer will sound like a riot, not a poetry reading.
That level of unfiltered communication leads perfectly into his fourth pillar. We cannot pray too simply.
Simple prayer.
The text from Lamentations says, pour out your hearts like water. Spurgeon highlights the physical properties of water here.
How does water pour?
Well, when you pour water out of a vessel, it does not make much noise, and it does not come out in a structured, deliberate shape. It runs out the quickest way it can. It flows out instantly and completely.
So no form, no structure, just out.
Right. He tells the congregation to pour it all out, even if there is black stuff in their hearts. He says, out with it then. It is better out than in.
Better out than in.
I find that terrifying. We spend our entire lives filtering ourselves. We filter our words for our bosses, for our spouses, for our social media feeds.
Constant curation.
The idea of going before God and just dumping the bucket, all the bitterness, the rage, the hidden sins, without trying to clean it up first feels incredibly vulnerable.
It is the ultimate vulnerability.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that people are terrified to approach God because their minds are filled with oaths, blasphemies, and old sins.
We want to present a clean bucket.
Right. The instinct is to try and clean the vessel before presenting it to God. But Spurgeon says, pour it out with all the oaths in it. Pour it out with all the sins in it. Do not try to run it through a water filter first.
Just dump the black stuff.
He specifically mocks the gentry who offer prayers that are poured out drop after drop, carefully measured to fit a grand ecclesiastical prayer book shape.
He tells them to abandon the performance.
The divine is not auditing their grammar or their presentation. The divine is looking for the raw, unedited contents of the heart.
And what is the result of that kind of prayer?
The promise he attaches to this is rooted in grace. Once the heart is completely emptied of all that black water, God will come and fill it again with refined wine. You cannot fill a vessel that is already full of stagnant water.
You have to empty it first.
Wow.
And all of this intense, vehement instruction, all of this talk about time, urgency, and pouring out your heart, it all builds toward a literal deadline happening in the room.
The clock is ticking down.
Yes. This brings us to the climax of the service. Spurgeon has been speaking with immense fire and volume, tearing down their defenses, and then he just stops.
Complete silence.
He pauses his sermon entirely. He tells the congregation to listen in complete silence to the ticking of the chapel clock. He calls the ticking the beating of the pulse of eternity and death's footsteps.
The psychological and sensory impact of this moment is brilliant.
It has to be overwhelming.
He has just driven them to the absolute edge of spiritual anxiety regarding their mortality.
Yeah.
And then he introduces a sensory deprivation tactic.
By silencing his own booming voice.
Yeah. He forces them to sit in silence and listen to the mechanical measurement of their vanishing lives. He removes all rhetorical distraction.
So they just have to face the passing seconds.
The congregation is forced to confront the undeniable physical reality of time passing in real time.
The imagery of the pulse of eternity is staggering. We use a clock to organize our day, to know when a meeting starts, or to time our cooking.
It is a domestic tool.
But here, the clock is reframed as a predator. Each time the clock ticks, death's footsteps are falling on the ground close behind you.
Death's footsteps, just chasing you down.
Just imagine sitting in that dark, cold room with thousands of people. Nobody is speaking. Nobody is moving. The only sound in the massive hall is the ticking of the clock.
Tick, tick,
You are listening to the seconds of your life drain away, and you can never get them back. How does a human mind cope with that level of existential dread?
It shatters the illusion of infinite time. And to drive the point home, Spurgeon uses another metaphor here.
What is the metaphor?
He compares a young man spending his time in vice and folly to a poor man spending his very last few coppers.
His last few coins.
Yeah, he describes a man who has only a few pennies left, counting them out one by one to buy a tiny candle and a piece of bread.
So he is desperately poor.
He warns the congregation that they think there is no bottom to their pockets, that they have a boundless store of time, but they do not.
They are actually the poor man.
Exactly. By stopping his speech and letting the ticking take over, he forces them to physically hear the coins dropping out of their pockets one by one. The ticking is the sound of their wealth depleting.
A boundless store of time. We think we are billionaires in the currency of time, so we throw away hours and days on things that mean absolutely nothing.
We really do. We squander it.
But Spurgeon acts like the angel in Sodom, putting his hand on Lot's shoulder and shouting, "Escape! Look not behind thee." He tells them that some of them do not even have a year left to live.
Which was statistically very true in 1855 London.
The text notes that 2 minutes of profound silence follow. 2 full minutes.
2 minutes of silence in a room of thousands is an eternity.
In a room of thousands, the only sounds breaking the silence are the sobs and groans of people weeping. And then the clock strikes 12.
The striking of the clock functions as a definitive threshold.
The new year arrives.
The old year is dead. The new year has arrived. When the bell tolls, Spurgeon breaks the silence and says, "You are now where you never were before, and you never will be again where you have been tonight."
Never will be again.
Crossing into a new year, or stepping into any new phase of life, requires leaving something dead behind to step into the living present.
The slate of the previous year is finalized.
The ledger is closed. The sins of that year are logged. Now they must figure out how to spend the remaining coppers in the new year, fully aware that the supply is finite and shrinking.
And after all of that heavy, intense reality, he does a really fascinating pivot. He transitions into the outro of the service with a surprisingly cheerful dismissal.
It is quite a tonal shift.
He says they have had a solemn meeting, and now they should have a cheerful ending. They sing a sweet hymn, and he wishes them grace, peace, and a happy new year.
A happy new year after telling them they are running out of coppers.
Right. He specifically prays that the ungodly might find mercy before another year rolls away. It is a warm, pastoral blessing to send them back out into the cold London night. Why the sudden shift in tone? Does he just want to let them off the hook before they go home?
Oh, it's definitely not about letting them off the hook. It is the proper application of law and gospel.
Law and gospel. Unpack that.
In Reformed theology, the law is preached to expose sin, shatter self-righteousness, and create a desperate need for a Savior. Spurgeon used the ticking clock, the impetuous torrent, and the omniscience of God to apply the crushing weight of the law.
He absolutely crushed them with the law.
He wounded them. But a pastor does not leave his flock bleeding. Once the law has done its work, the gospel must be applied to bind up the wounds.
Ah, so the gospel is the bandage.
Yeah. He terrifyingly showed them their iron hearts and their secret sins, instructed them on how to cry out for mercy, and now he offers them the blessing of grace.
He gives them the way out.
He leaves them with the hope that the God who sees their secret sins is also the God who provides the refined wine to fill their emptied hearts. The cheerfulness at the end is the joy of knowing that while time is fleeing, grace is abundantly available.
The law crushes and the gospel restores. We have covered incredible ground today, analyzing heavenly arithmetic, iron hearts, and the sheer audacity of banging on midnight doors.
It has been a massive text to work through.
It really has. But we need to tie this directly to the reality you are facing right now. You do not know how many coins are left in your pocket.
Nobody does.
The clock is ticking in your own life, acting as the pulse of eternity. If you knew you were down to your last few coppers of time, what black stuff would you finally stop hiding?
Yeah, what would you pour out?
Exactly. Whose door would you knock down in the middle of the night to demand bread? And how would you choose to spend your very next hour?
Because those coins are dropping.
The champagne and the confetti of a new year will fade, but the heavenly arithmetic remains. Thank you for joining this deep dive. We invite you to apply this heavenly arithmetic to your own days.